Hi, everybody. I hope everybody's doing okay out there. New York is bright, clear, sunny, and starting to get warm. These are three case histories from my files that were chosen because they represent the essence of the air element in love relationships. Please keep in mind I'm discussing the airy temperament, meaning those who have this element prominent in their birth charts. Sun sign, moon sign, rising sign, Mercury, Venus, Mars positions. I am not saying that these examples represent all the Geminis, Librans, and Aquarians on the planet. Okay, case history number one, a Gemini woman. I was 21 and she was 23 when first she came to see me for a reading. She was my client, but she was also my friend, and our relationship continued until her death in 2014. Her life was very Gemini. Lots of change, 3 marriages, children from each marriage, and a lust for knowledge. I never found anyone who read as many books as I did, except for her. Unfortunately, she also possessed the overcharged nervous system associated with the planet Mercury, ruler of Gemini, and dealt with it compulsively through a 4-pack-a-day smoking habit, which destroyed her lungs and eventually took her life. Busy, busy, busy. Her life was a whirlwind of busyness, perhaps trying to escape from dealing with the emotions of her chaotic past. She escaped, as air signs will do, from the bad feelings and bad memories of her past, which were considerable. There was her mother, who disliked and abused her but favored her brother. There was a father who raped her at age 15, and the twin babies that were born when she was 16, who were taken from her against her will and put up for adoption. Then there was the Aries first husband who broke her nose in a fit of jealousy, the Scorpio second husband who threw her out into the street, and the trauma that occurred at age 30 when her mother confessed that the man who raped her at 15 was not really her father. Apparently, her real father abandoned her pregnant mother, refusing to marry her. Another man came along and offered marriage, which she gratefully accepted. Gemini told me, "At least it finally explains why my mother hated me." Gemini intellectualized the emotional storms of her past, something the air signs tend to do. There was no primal therapy, no crying, screaming, cursing, and purging. Instead, all of that raw emotion was pushed into her lungs in a cloud of smoke, inhaling her life away. In other words, sucking it up. Husband number 3, a Capricorn, rescued her when number 2 threw her out. He married her, gave her a home, and she gave him 2 children plus a stepchild from a previous union. She believed she had finally found someone who cared, until 4 years into the marriage, after the birth of child number 2, he moved out of their bedroom and led a solitary and chaste life. Gemini joked, "That's what I get for marrying a guy who wanted to be a priest." From that day forward, she referred to him as the monk. It was a marriage that stuck because there were no emotional demands placed on Gemini by her husband. With Scorpio, the relationship was volatile because all his demands were emotional, and she was uncomfortable with what she called his irrational nature. But that's exactly what the realm of feeling and emotion is: irrational, a right-brained function. Meanwhile, she wanted calm, cool reasoning, the realm that air signs are most comfortable living in. Emotion is treated by the typical airy type as the black beast who must stay locked up in the unconscious. But extreme nervous tension is the result of all that emotional repression, not to mention the insomnia my friend was afflicted with, or the high blood pressure. Rest in peace, my friend, the peace you always longed for. All my love always. Case history number 2, Aquarian male. He was more than just an Aquarian. He was 100% Uranian. The planet Uranus was at the top of his chart, conjunct his midheaven, and heavily aspected. Freedom-driven, restless, easily bored, and rebellious. Try to force him into anything, and he inevitably would go in the opposite direction just to prove his autonomy. When he first came to see me, he was entangled with an Aries female. I use the word entangled because that was how he viewed romantic relationships. She recently blew up at him and demanded to know exactly where she stood on the totem pole of his life. According to Aries, she was at the bottom. After his freedom, his friends, the political groups he belonged to, and his intellectual interests. His quirks included disappearing for days on end, not responding to her emails or phone calls, and refusing to be interrogated about his whereabouts when he wasn't with her. One day he picked her up for a date and told her he had just quit his job because he totally had it with corporate America and Midtown Manhattan. He announced he was leaving for Hawaii. "What's in Hawaii?" she asked. To which he replied, "I don't know. I'll find out when I get there." Aries asked, "You mean you're leaving me? Just like that?" "You can come if you want," he said. "Or, if you'd rather stay in New York, stay." This particular Aries was true to her sign and was stimulated by the idea of going off on an adventure into the unknown. "When do we leave?" she asked. So they did it. They went to Hawaii, got an apartment and jobs, and Aries was thrilled that she had taken the risk. She luxuriated in the warmth and the tropical setting and found herself thanking him for the change. 8 months into their Hawaiian adventure, Aries came home from work to find Aquarius in the bedroom, packing. "I've had it with this place," he told her. "I'm going back to New York." "What?" Aries responded. "You can stay if you want to. I'm not forcing you to go back with me. If you're happy here, stay." Soon, I got a phone call from a man whose voice sounded muffled and hushed. "What's going on?" I asked him. "I'm in the bedroom closet, sitting against the door, trying to get away from her. You should hear her. She's screaming. Every other word flying out of her mouth is the F word," he said. When I tell you that he sincerely didn't get it, did not understand what Aries was so hot about, you've got to believe me, truly, he didn't get it. Most of his chart was airy, and the entire emotional realm was usually a puzzlement to him. All he kept saying was that he wasn't forcing her to do anything, and he couldn't understand her wrath or the source of her outrage. Aries stayed on in Hawaii, met and married a stable accountant a couple of years later. Aquarius fell hard for another Aquarian, but was very uncomfortable with her. When I asked him what was causing his discomfort, he said, "I don't trust her. I just don't trust her." When I pressed him further, he said, "Well, I think it's because she reminds me of me." Case history number 3, a Libra male. He was a double Libra, sun and moon, and he seemed to have twice the need to be in a relationship at all times. He changed companions approximately every 6 months. The minute one relationship was over, he'd run out to all the bars and clubs he frequented and proceeded to latch onto the first woman he could find, meaning whatever female was willing to hand over her phone number. How about taking some time out to determine what you really need and want in a relationship, I suggested. Well, he said, my closest friend and I, a Gemini, stayed home one Saturday night to discuss why we were both failing in our intimate relationships. We made a list of do's and don'ts. When my last girlfriend walked away from me, I called her up and said, I just don't get it. I did everything right. And I did. I followed the list we made to the letter. Her rejection should not have happened. Me and my friend discussed and debated and analyzed every single point on that list. It was foolproof. What did she say to you about why she left? I asked. She wanted to know if I also studied sex manuals on how to please a woman in bed because she felt I made love in a mechanical way, like I was following a list, do 5 minutes of this and 10 minutes of that. Is it true? I asked. Yes, he confirmed. Let's forget about all the lists for a minute and tell me what you feel, what your gut is telling you about your male-female relationships. That's when I drew a blank expression from him. I waited, but his features remained blank. He looked like someone in a state of shock. It is said that the airy type represses emotion, but it's more than that. They negate emotion, rationalize it, and blank it out altogether. The ultra-sophisticated and highly intellectual airy type, who can at times appear icy cold, is in fact a deeply sensitive soul with an undeveloped, innocent, and childlike emotional nature that is usually hidden underneath a facade of worldliness. Air is intensely drawn to the watery type and the mothering and nurturing of the water element. Air is more emotionally dependent and needy than they will ever admit to themselves, because repressed in the unconscious are powerful emotions.